This is Justin.
And this is Haley, and you're listening to The Price of Avocado Toast.
We're a married millennial couple wanting to normalize conversations about money. We want to hear about your highs and your lows,
The do's and the don'ts on your path towards financial freedom. Hi Toasties, welcome to The Price of Avocado Toast.
Whether you're a first-time listener or you've been following us from the start of this thing, we're so glad to have this conversation with you today. I am super hyped on today's interview. We've got Travis Shelton on from the Meaning Over Money podcast and the Meaning Over Money brand, and I'm just so excited that we got to sit down with him. It's like a dream come true for me.
Yeah, I'm stoked. This is something I've been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Travis is a financial coach who's been super supportive of us basically at the start of our debt-free journey, and that's carried over into him kind of helping you build your coaching brand, and it was just great getting to chat with him.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Let's dive right in.
Let's do it. Here's our interview with Travis Shelton from Meaning Over Money. All right, everybody. Today we are sitting down with Travis Shelton from the Meaning Over Money podcast. I'm super hyped because my favorite pandemic podcast, The Budget Teacher, was discontinued, and it felt like right afterwards, Meaning Over Money started, and it's just been like a banger podcast ever since. So I feel, again, like I'm fanboying over here with my favorite podcaster on. So Travis, thank you for sitting down to chat with us today.
Well, thank you. You are far too kind, and I'm equally as excited to sit down with you guys. It's been fun to watch you journey over this past year, and so this is a real. I think it's a past time for us to do this, and so I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Definitely.
It's definitely about time because you were one of the first people that I connected with over a year ago when I first started my Instagram, when I first joined the debt-free community, before we even started the podcast. So I'm just so excited that you're here. I'm also a Meaning Over Money super fan. I get slightly annoyed, I'm going to be honest, when I listen to the episodes and then I have to wait until the next week, but that's just me. Waiting. That's a good thing, right? That means I want more.
That's right. We'll just have to do 5 days a week.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, step on it, would you?
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, Travis, just to start us off, if you don't mind, we've obviously heard your story on Meaning Over Money, and it's something that we've obviously resonated with and something that is super great for us to hear. But if you could share with our listeners just a little bit about your family's debt-free journey and your debt-free story.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of go back to graduating college. When I graduated, I moved to Kansas City, and I had this really amazing career in real estate. And I worked for this small investment firm and was investing in real estate all over the U.S. And I really thought I had life figured out. I thought I had all the pieces worked out, and it was smooth sailing from here on out. Had a good job. My coworkers felt like family. I met a girl. I bought a house. I found a church, and all the pieces lined up. And that was until one day I walked into my office and somebody pulled me into a conference room where they explained to everybody in the company that everyone was fired except for me. And that was it. And that was the end of this stage of my life. And this was right when I thought I had life figured out. And that was more out of arrogance than anything. But I was this young guy, and everything I had worked for and built was gone. It felt like instantly as this person talked. And there was another complicating factor. I'd been engaged for 3 days. And so that really sucked. And to know that my fiance was going to come along for this journey with me, and it was ending. And there was something that was the elephant in the room for me. And that was in that moment, I had $236,000 of debt. And I kind of just did the normal things everyone else did. And this was right at the Great Recession, the GFC. And there was a lot of things that were happening at the same time that were scary. And I was watching all my friends become unemployed. And they said, "Hey, Travis, we want you to move to Iowa. We're going to offer you a job to help fix these messes." But I didn't want to move to Iowa. My fiance was from Kansas City. That was her home. That's all she knew. That was the life we wanted to live. But this debt was hovering over us. And I realized in that moment, like I had lost. I had made some dumb decisions, but they didn't feel dumb until that very moment. And that's kind of when I realized, like, well, duh, this debt stuff works really well until the moment it doesn't.
Yeah.
And that hurt. And I had to go to explain to my new fiance that I'm an idiot and that her supposedly money smart boyfriend, now fiance, had ruined it all. And I would say that was the most humiliating moment of my life, having to explain that to her. And we made the tough choice that night that we were going to move to Iowa. We were going to do what we needed to do because we had to, but we made a promise. We said, we're never going to let money dictate our decisions in life ever again. And we're going to get out of the stupid debt. And fast forward, it took 4.5 years, and we paid off 236,000 in 4.5 years. And so that was kind of the journey. And there was a lot in there, but I think by the time we got out, our marriage was stronger. We realized we could do this. And if we could do this, we could do anything. And it was really with this idea in mind that it should never be about money. And here I put myself in a position where we made a very big life choice because of money.
That's amazing. A lot of that sounded like our story too. I'm like, oh, interesting career change, moving things around. There's a lot that happens when you kind of have those wake up moments of, oh, whatever I'm doing is not working, or I have to just quickly switch gears.
Yeah. Travis, if I could ask, I mean, I just love hearing the way that you share your story, and I don't know if I've ever, kind of mentioned this to Haley, but the way that you speak about your wife and her resiliency through it all is really impressive. Were you guys kind of a unified front with money as boyfriend, girlfriend before you got engaged? Or was it like once you went home and kind of had that difficult conversation, was it like right then, okay, we're united in this, let's do it? Or how did that work?
I would like to say that it was always that way, but I've never really thought this through until you asked it. I think in that moment, that was the unifying moment for us, because I don't think we had a choice at that time. And I think that was a very humbling moment for me, because before that very moment, I was probably anything but humble. And my wife will be the first to admit she's allergic to numbers. And I agree with that. I think that's probably true. And she doesn't care about money. And I love that about her. And so for both of us, it's never been about money. It's been about something bigger. And I think that the fact that she's grounded in that way helped pull me in that direction. And I probably don't give her enough credit for that as often as I should, but that we've been in alignment of that on that since probably that very moment.
So your podcast name is Meaning Over Money, and you've mentioned this now while we've been recording, Meaning Over Money. Can you just explain what that means to you? Obviously, money is more than just money, but what does that really mean to you on a deeper level?
Well, I think there's an irony in the fact that I'm a financial coach and I talk about this all day, every day with people, but I don't care about money at all. I find it to be boring. And so there's an irony in that. And I always say this to people, I say, I don't care about money at all. And people laugh, and then they'll later come back and say, you really don't care about money, do you? I'm like, no. Otherwise, how can you take a 90% pay cut and just leave your career to go do something totally different when you have a wife that stays home with 2 3-year-olds? We really don't care. And so for me, I don't believe that money's important, but I do believe handling it well is. And so that's where I come down on it, is that we need to handle it well, but it's not that important, because money is never about money. It's always about something bigger. And that something bigger is different for a lot of people. And we all have our different versions of that. But for me, it's about generosity. It's about my wife staying at home, raising our babies. It's about me being the best father and husband I can be. It's about me serving people in my unique way. It's about me following my faith. I'm a Christian. I believe that God calls us. So for me, it's about following that calling. And so I think for everybody, there's a piece of that, of what does it mean to follow the meaning? Because our society says it's all about the money. All of our decisions are based around money, and we don't mean to do that. And we don't do it necessarily out of a sense of greed. That's just the way our culture works. And so we are always led down this road that we need to make choices around money, whether that's where we live, where we send our kids to college, what careers we take, what we do with the money that we're blessed with. We always have money in the back of our mind, when really it should be more about meaning.
I love that. That's so awesome. And that's one thing that we've definitely started to kind of come around on. I think that when you start, or at least the way that we started our debt-free journey, it was so much about money. And like slowly through the habit changing process, and like being kind of, I don't want to say, awakened, but like paying more attention to what it truly is about. You're so right. Like money's never just about money. It's always something bigger. It was like, well, why do we want to get debt free? Like, so our daughters don't have to have these feelings, so that we can take these vacations, so that I'm not working a second job over the summer, so that they can do extracurriculars and we can enjoy life together and not feel like we lose that time together. At the start of the debt free journey, it was like everything was about maximizing money to get out of debt.
Right.
Yeah, I just love that. I think that a lot of people are going to resonate with that, as they slowly begin to look at things.
I want to kind of go back where you talked about taking your 90% pay cut and moving. I know that you, correct me if I'm wrong on this, you sold your house and went to renting during this time, right?
We did. So in mid 2019, we made a very difficult choice. And I don't even want to pretend it wasn't difficult. It was the hardest choice of my life and probably of our marriage, that I left my career. My career was so awesome. I mean, at that time, my career was going over to the Middle East, into Europe, and cultivating relationships with investors, and then bringing that money back to the U.S. and investing it in U.S. real estate. And so I would be in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Bahrain, UAE. Like, it was the coolest job, but I just felt that, like I said, I don't make decisions around money. I make decisions around meaning. And at the time, I really just felt like we needed to do this. And my wife was maybe a few years ahead of me. She was pushing me a little bit. And so we made this decision. It ultimately was about a 90% pay cut for our family in that moment. And now it didn't stay 90, but it started at a 90% pay cut, and we've been working our way since. And I don't know, and maybe we'll make that much someday. I don't know. And I don't really care. But part of that, I remember I came home one day and I said, "Hey, Sarah." Now, granted, I didn't think this was actually going to work, and I thought this was going to be a bad conversation. I went home and I said, "Hey, Sarah, what do you think about this idea?" And we had been planning on spending part of our year in Asia at this point, and just going in and introducing our two little boys to other cultures. And we have a lot of friends, and I was going to do some speaking engagements throughout Asia. And so I said, "Hey, Sarah, what do you think about this idea? What if we sell our home?" And we had a paid off newer house. We bought it new, and then eventually, and then we paid it off. And I said, "What if we paid us? I'm sorry. What if we sell our house? And what if we just move into a rental? And we spend this next season of life just focusing on our family. I'll build the business. We'll spend time with our little boys. We'll spend time with each other, and we'll travel to Asia, and we'll have more of a outside of the house lifestyle. We'll move to a place where we can walk to the movie theater, into the restaurants, into coffee shops, into some bars, and maybe we'll do that." And she, within 10 seconds, she said, "Yeah, let's do that." I'm like, whoa.
No fight.
Whoa. I was like, you're not going to tell me this is a crazy idea? Like, I was kind of hoping you'd talk me out of this. And she goes, "No, as you're talking," I'm like, that she said, that's a really good idea. We should just do that. And that was really it for us. And I think maybe we should have processed it a little bit more, but that was what was best for us. And so we did it. Now, I love the nightmare of a story of you selling your home and following along. It was excruciating watching you, because we had a nightmare selling our home too. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And it was just way more lengthy than we thought it would be. And so I feel for you in that. But by the time, we sold our house, we were into our new townhome that we were renting, and it was awesome. It was an awesome life. And now, what we didn't know, because we remember when I said we were going to travel to Asia and go live there, we were going to have an out of the house, more of a life of just going out, bars, restaurants, movies, coffee shops, and parks. And fast forward just a few months, COVID.
Everything you wanted got shut down.
Everything. My speaking engagements all got canceled. Our trip to Asia got canceled now 5 times. We couldn't go to any restaurants or coffee shops or even parks for a bit. And so it turned into a seemingly what felt like a nightmare for a bit, but we never doubted it was the right thing to do. And we're still glad we did it. And there was really some inherent good things that came out of it. But that's been part of the journey for us that I think has raised a lot of criticism from people around us.
So, I mean, we've obviously, like you said, gone from buying to renting, and you have as well. How do you respond when you see people that are like, "Oh, purchasing a home is, the best investment." As somebody who's like, maybe keyed in on investing and what like that term actually means, and like getting a return on your money. How do you respond to that, or what do you do? I know that you work, often with young adults in kind of like youth ministry and stuff. How do you kind of coach along that idea, or like present that idea to them?
There seems to be two camps in this world, and you just go to Twitter to find
Yeah.
that. But there's your house is an investment and your house is not an investment. And of course, your house is an investment. I would just argue it's not a good one.
Yeah.
And I think mathematically, and Cole and I are going to really launch into this topic here shortly. And I'm a little nervous for the feedback. It's going to be brutal. But I make the argument that a house is not a good financial investment. It is an investment. It is. But there's something that we miss. What we miss in the house conversation of buy versus rent. Because often what people do is they'll say, well, I could rent here or I could buy here at the same level, and thus I should obviously buy.
Right.
Duh, why not buy? You're throwing away money on rent, right? You're throwing away money on rent. Well, what we don't think about is when you rent, you have a cap on your living expenses, a ceiling. When you buy, you have a floor. Your mortgage payment is the beginning, it's not the end. Whereas when you rent, it's the maximum. And it changes life. It changes how we handle things. And so when you think about all the expenses that go into buying a home and owning a home and then selling a home, the mathematical return on your house is not great at all. And what we do is we just say, well, I bought the house for 400,000 and I sold it in this many years for 475,000. Thus, look how good of a return it was. Duh, of course it was a good investment. But if you really dig deeper and you factor in some other things, I would argue that wasn't a good investment. Now, that's okay. Because what I say is it may not be a good financial investment, but I am pro home. My wife and I, we will buy a home here in the next few years, probably, but it could be the best life investment. And this is what I try to illustrate to my clients is that don't make this about money. Make it about meaning. It should never be about money. And so I go through this with my clients and I'll show them with their exact situation how buying a home is not a good financial decision, but often they still buy a home because it's the best life decision. It's the best life investment for them at the time. And so I don't mean to be splitting hairs here, because I do believe that when we buy a home for the right reason and because it's a good financial decision is not the right reason, but when we buy it for the right reason, that we make different decisions on how we buy, what we buy, when we buy.
Yeah.
And that changes everything for people.
Yeah, we're talking with some friends, and they mentioned in a later podcast episode, Friends on Fire, they said, it's a lifestyle investment. It's like financially, like you said, mathematically, doesn't really add up. And we learned that, through trying to look through repairs to get our home listed to be sold, and then things that we found out during inspection that, cost us some value. And it's okay to purchase a home, and we will, like you, purchase a home again one day. But it really is important to understand, like, why am I doing this? What am I looking for? Where do I want my family to be? And what's the value there?
I remember right when we sold the house and we got money, my dad called me and was like, well, now you have money.
It's like, go buy a home.
Interest rates are low. You should really buy a house right now. Just get your money in. And I had a really hard time explaining to him just because he didn't get it. And I feel like sometimes people, until they're ready to get it, they're not going to get it. But he didn't want to hear the fact that because we have money doesn't mean we need to buy a house. In fact, it was such a terrible home sale process. I do not want to buy another house ever again until I know that we're going to be there for at least 10 years, or that we plan to be there for a really long time, because we were only in our house that we sold for 4 years, and that felt like a long time, but it was not. That was not very long, and it was such a pain in the butt to sell it. We put so much money into it, and I'm just super thankful that we were able to walk with money, because I would have been resentful having gone through all of that without walking with some cash, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one of the biggest arguments that gets made in this conversation is, well, you need to build equity.
Yeah.
And when you rent, you're not building equity. Well, there's more than one way to build equity. I just saw a post. You guys just maxed out your Roth IRAs. That's called equity.
Yep.
Yeah.
your equity doesn't have to be in your home. And if you have equity in your home, great. We're in this crazy housing market, especially you guys, California. The housing market's been great. And people try to, use that to prove like, well, see, Travis, you're an idiot. Well, not necessarily. I mean, this is a blip on the radar. And so you guys are building equity in your way. And so when people rent, it doesn't mean they're not building equity. It just means they're not building equity in a home.
Yeah.
And I think we're unfairly comparing things. We say, oh, look, you have a house, you're building equity. Oh, you're renting, you're not building equity. Well, that's unfair. You're not building equity in a home. No, but there are other considerations that are very powerful.
Yeah, I think of, when we were owning a home, like you said, it's the cap that you're going to spend monthly on your housing, and your landlord or property management's going to take care of the stuff beyond that. But when you're a homeowner, all of that falls onto you. So when we needed to, get even something small like a pest service out, once every month, that's money that even as little as $100 going into a retirement or an investment vehicle can build equity. Maybe it's not in the actual building itself, but you really do. That's a great way to put it. The floor versus the ceiling idea of paying monthly.
Yeah, and that $100 was just tacked onto the mortgage. So if our mortgage was $2,400, then all of a sudden it was $2,500, and then there was a windstorm that knocked down a tree, and we had to replace fences
and windows getting repaired. And
like it was it was definitely the base level was the mortgage. There was so much more on top of that.
Yeah, and I think for young adults, and that's one of the reasons I think I was attracted to you guys so early on is that your love for young adults, and that we share that.
Yeah.
That's who I serve. I serve young adults. And so I love this conversation when people say, well, should I buy a house? And then we have that conversation. And I remember my business partner, Cole, him and his wife, they're 27. And so they just had a baby. They had a baby last fall. And I remember he called me one day, and I coached them long before he became my business partner. And that's a whole nother story. But he called me, he said, hey, Travis, we're going to buy this house. And I said, I just want you to recognize this is a bad financial decision for you. You understand that, right? And he goes, yep, we've just talked about it. We are in total agreement. This is not a good financial decision. He said, but this is the best life decision for us. And I said, I totally agree. Let's do it. Let's go buy this house. And it's been this beautiful blessing for him and his wife, Kate. And I love it. And it's not because it's a great financial decision, but it's because it was a beautiful life decision for them at that stage of life.
Such a good way to put it. I love that.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. This is a
really bad financial decision, buddy.
Yeah. But another cool thing, too, is if you have friends like that,
yeah.
That you guys, I'm sure it's gone well beyond, client, relationship to good friends. You can have those conversations and say, like, hey, just so we all are clear, like, this isn't a great decision financially, but if your family's happy, like, let's go do it. I'm behind you.
Yeah.
That's an important conversation to have. Travis, you must be a savant, because literally the next thing I wanted to ask you about was young adults, because as a football coach, I love spending time around young adults and trying to do my best to speak some type of wisdom in them that I feel that I've gained over the years through football. And that's one thing I really appreciate about you is just the amount that you pour into young adults. And I was talking to Haley, and I was like, I wonder where that stemmed from. I wonder if that was like simply, Travis through his ministry and his work, or was it like you had a background of growing up and feeling like somebody was either there or not there for you? Like, when did you find that you really gravitated towards helping like the younger generation to be wise and make good choices?
You were hitting me with questions I've never really thought about. And as soon as you ask them, it comes rushing in. I think there's two reasons, really. Number one, when I had that reckoning in my life, when I had that humbling moment, realizing I was really doing dumb things, I was 27. And so I think maybe I just have this sentimental PTSD, we'll call it, of being a young adult, in being led down this road, not even being let go down this road. I was encouraged down this road that I was on. And I was encouraged by the generation above me and my peers. And so I think I always think about young Travis making all these dumb decisions, not knowing any better. And I say, I want to help the new young Travises. I want to help them not do what I did because there was so much heartbreak and pain involved in this for me. And I so badly want to help others not have that.
I feel that.
And I think the other part is in a weird twist of circumstance, I became a youth group leader, and I just finished. I'm taking a year off, but I spent 8 years doing youth ministry for high school kids. And over the course of 8 years, they turn into young adults. And so I have all these young friends that I love so much and I have such close ties to. And so I'm watching them kind of come into the same toxicity that I remember watching myself in. And I love them so much that I was drawn to combining my love of my youth group kids, former youth group kids, and my ability to help people do this money stuff and career stuff better. And I think that was the melding of the two. And I think that's probably how I ended up here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That makes a whole lot of sense. And I really resonate with that with my own financial coaching and trying to figure out who my ideal client is. And I keep coming back to the fact that I really want to work with people who are in a significant amount of debt because that's where we were. And if I can help someone either prevent them from getting there in the first place or help them out, I understand that firsthand because we were there. Same thing with you working with the 27-year-olds who are in the same situation you were. It's very relatable.
Yeah. And it's a trip as somebody who's coached players who are now adults and who are slowly getting married. And I don't think I have any players who have kids yet. I think I'm still safe there. But, I started coaching when I was 20, coaching high schoolers. And so I've been coaching now for a decade. Many of them are getting to the age where they're starting to marry and settle down and stuff. And so it is really interesting. You only get them as like a kid for this brief amount of time. And now I'm going to have relationships with them as adults for the rest of time. And so I really I don't care so much about the 2-3 years that you're playing on my football team. I care about the 60 plus years that you're in the community as a good human being. That's the human that I want to pour into, And so it's interesting, Travis, like you said, they might have been in your youth group, but they're now adults stepping into this super toxic capitalistic world that is like all this pressure on them. And you hope that like maybe one thing you said resonated with them at some point.
I just want to affirm that what you just talked about, Justin, because I mean, we need more coaches and teachers and people that are involved with our young people that will invest in them, not just when they have to and when they're in front of them, but in the years to come, because that's really the beauty of these relationships. And that's where some of the most good can come is when you're no longer a teacher, you're no longer a sports coach, you are now a peer and maybe a mentor figure. And that to me is so good. It's the best.
Yeah. I think of,
That just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, seriously. My senior football coach, I started coaching with him when I got out of high school, just a couple short years later. And eventually he hired my brother to take over the football program as the head coach. And, they're colleagues on the same campus now and they're friends. And
And your brother got married at his house.
yeah, like it's so interesting because he was our head coach for such a short time. And now they're colleagues and peers. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's fun. That's the perk there, I think, of working with young adults is that you get this really extended amount of time to watch them mature and grow into wonderful humans. So that's fun.
Totally.
Okay, Travis, I have a question that always kind of racks my mind because it's something, again, I really resonate with the idea of meaning over money, and it's a reason that I just love hearing you speak. Haley and I have talked about like, man, Travis is just such a good presenter, and the way that you share information is so great. But one question that I kind of always come back to is like, how can we support or how can we I don't even want to say speak positively, but like those like low income earners who maybe in that very moment, as you say, that season of life, it is simply about money, right? Because they're so worried about the day to day or the week to week or paycheck to paycheck. How can you, support them and walk alongside them through the transition to it finally becoming about meaning over the money?
It's hard. It's hard. And I think that's where a lot of the criticism I get comes from. And people say, well, Travis, if you don't think money makes you happy, you haven't been poor. And what the science shows is that money makes us really happy until our needs are met. And then a little bit more. And then after that, money doesn't make us much incrementally happier. And so there's this idea that it's either all or nothing, that either money makes you happy because money makes the world go round and you can buy all the kind of fun crap, or money doesn't make you happy at all. And then that's where the criticism comes. So there's a reality that we face, that we have to pay our bills. We have to be able to put a roof over our head, have transportation, food. We need this in order to just at a baseline level. And a lot of people don't have that, or a lot of people struggle with that. And so to that, I say, I feel you. I feel you on that. I work with people every day who aren't there yet. And so we got to get there first. And this whole meaning over money, there's seasons in life where it's going to be about money.
Right.
It's going to be about, and I always talk to my young friends about this. We've had crappy jobs. I always talk about we need to pursue work that matters and we should get fulfillment and enjoyment out of our work. I believe that with every ounce of me. I've also had my share of really crappy jobs. Working at a cheese factory at 4 a.m. on Sundays. I've had my share of just terrible jobs. There's a season for everything. And so we have to pay our dues. We have to figure it out. We have to work through it. And I think that's the dedication, the persistence to kind of work our way through that. And we shouldn't be there forever, but we may be there for a season. And I think we also have to humble ourselves because not every job is going to be our dream job. And as much as I talk about pursuing work that matters, sometimes we're going to have a job that's just not going to be fun. And that's okay. It's not okay if that's our job and we're just conceding that's the rest of our life. There's some people that say, well, I may have a crappy job, but I only have to do it for 18 more years. And to that, I say, that's not okay. That's not a way to live. That's not a way to ride the rest of our years out. But there's a reality that there's going to be a season in life that helps us get to the next job. And it might be a crappy job that gets us to the job that we want, or helps us gain some skills or some relationships or some influence to move forward. And so to my friends that are teetering on the edge, they're right there on that, I'm trying to make it work. I tell them, have patience, have discipline, keep going, and give yourselves grace. We're not gonna conquer the world today when we're in that role. And the goal isn't to conquer the world financially. The goal isn't to pay off 100,000 of debt when we're just trying to pay our bills. We got to give ourselves grace and do what we can do. And sometimes what we can do is not a lot, and that's okay. Because this is a season. I like to look at everything in seasons. And so if you have a crappy job or you have a job that it's barely paying the bills, just give yourself grace and keep moving forward because you'll get there. You'll get there. And I did a podcast on this recently. And I think what we tend to do is we compare our beginning to somebody else's middle. And it's so easy to do that. I do it every day. I do it with your podcast. And I'm like, man, why can't I have a podcast that's as cool as their podcast? Why can't I be as successful as they are? And well, you started before me.
Right.
And you've put the work in and you have the relationships and you've done what you've needed to do. So it's unfair for me to be where you're at. And so we have to give ourselves grace and not compare our beginning to somebody else's middle.
That's awesome. I think too that just hearing you speak, like that still is the meaning over money.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we've got to get the needs met like day to day, and that's hard and people struggle. But if you can keep the meaning of it all in perspective, you can still lean into that meaning portion of it. Like, okay, this is a season of life. And we've said that. I've probably adopted that phrase from you, just listening to you speak. Like when we have hard moments, I just remind myself, like, this is a season of life, right? Even as young parents sorting out having 2 babies, as young parents who just moved, and I'm sorting out being away from my hometown and stuff. Like I remember, like, this is a season of life and we'll get settled, things will get settled, and at the end of the day, like it will all work itself out. And if it doesn't, we can always move to the next season and decide what's going to be next. It doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah, and you guys are coming out of a really hard season, between being third trimester, trying to sell a house, trying to do this podcast and make it bigger and grow your audience, and Haley becoming a financial coach. I mean, you guys had a lot cooking. That was a hard season. And so my prayer is that this next season is really awesome, because you paid your dues, you did the hard work for the season, and all seasons come and go. And so this is a new season. And so it'll be fun to see what is that, because it's not going to be what it was. It could be really amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I frequently think, because Justin just started, I mean, for over a year and a half, he was home with us 24/7, and then all of a sudden now he's back to work all the time. Plus, he goes to football practice, so he's gone for 12 hours a day. So all of a sudden, it went from like we're together all the time to we see each other for 2 hours a day, and it hasn't been easy. But we're constantly like, okay, there's 5 weeks left of football. Like, this season is about to end. It just started, but it's about to be over. It's a really short period of time where things are hard. And whether that means someone who's listening is working a really crappy job, it does not have to be forever. You do not have to have that job forever. Maybe you just need that job while you are in grad school hammering out debt, or just trying not to accumulate more debt, or just pay your bills. But eventually, it will pass, and you will be able to have something with more meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love that point too, that when you have the meaning in mind, it's much easier to stomach what we're enduring. If we have a crappy job that we might not enjoy, and maybe it pays a little, maybe it pays a lot, I don't know. But if we have the meaning in mind, it's not for nothing. There's a purpose behind it. And when you can tie your meaning to your work and to what you do every day, from the time you leave your house and the time you get home, anything is possible. What's not possible is that feeling of helplessness and hopelessness of working at a job you hate and not knowing what the purpose of it is, because it just feels endless. And that is a lonely, destitute feeling. And I don't wish that upon anybody.
All right, I have to ask you this question. I've wondered this for quite some time, but as a financial coach, as someone who works with young adults, what's the biggest misconception that you hear amongst your clients between how they feel about money, or thoughts that they have about money?
There's a few things that come to mind. I think that the enormous pressure to buy a house. Oh, that's probably the biggest elephant in the room with young adults.
Yeah.
Because you graduate college, and then maybe you're getting married, and maybe you're having kids, and in this weight of, when you're going to buy a house, you should hurry up and buy a house. That's heavy for people, and they wear it. And so that's one. And I think another one is that this notion that when they make a lot more money, and you fill in the blank, how much and when they make more money, this all gets better and it all gets easier. And I've coached professional athletes. I've coached executives making $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year. And I'll tell you, a $20 million contract still doesn't make you happy. Now, it can make you wealthy, but that doesn't guarantee in any shape or form you're going to be happy or have any sort of meaning in life. And so I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that more money is the answer. And I think there's a big gap in there. And so those are probably the two biggest ones that I see. I think there's the other ones, the common ones. You're always going to have debt. You should always buy new cars, that car payment, that stuff's ubiquitous in our culture at this point. It's so woven in
Yeah.
that it probably goes without saying.
Yeah. I love that one though, about, kind of more money makes everything better. And you're right. At some point, sure, when your basic needs are met, things might get easier. But if you can't manage, it's like that Instagram saying, if you can't manage $10,000, you're not gonna be able to manage $100,000. You're not gonna be able to manage $1 million. The lifestyle inflation opportunity in our country is everywhere. It's in commercials, it's in billboards, it's in community conversations, it's in the job force. It's everywhere. So if you don't have that set up, it doesn't matter the amount of money. It's not going to make things easier to manage.
It'll make it harder for sure.
Yeah.
And I think this, and again, I don't think people are meaning to do this. I don't think people are meaning to be materialistic. I don't think people are meaning to care so deeply about money. I think what people ultimately desire, and I think they deeply, inherently desire it, is happiness. And our culture says that this stuff will make us happy. And, and I mentioned the behavioral science studies that show money makes us really, really happy until our needs are met. And then it doesn't make us much happier. And so there are three things, though, that they have proven that can make us happier. Number one, work that matters. And that could go in a whole nother direction of our society saying work is bad, not working is good. But work that matters creates happiness, not the crappy job that we're trying to get out of and we're on this chase to retire as early as we can. No, work that matters. And that work doesn't mean a lot of money. It could, but it's not about money. It's about the work. Number two is deep and meaningful relationships. That makes us happy. And number three is generosity, which is funny because it's the antithesis of what we think. Because when we give, we have less. If we give $5,000 away, we have $5,000 less to our name. And conventional wisdom says we should be less happy. But studies showed that the more generous we are, the happier we can become. And so I think we're on this pursuit of happiness. I just think we're looking for it in the wrong places.
Yeah, that's one of our biggest excitements for slowly becoming better at managing our money. Yeah, is so that we can give. I mean, we just want to give ridiculously. We want to be able to not hesitate when things come up that we're like, oh, that's something we want to give to, or that's something we want to support, or that's a cause we care about. Like, that's something we're really, really excited about, giving.
And we have lists of things like that we want to do, eventually we'll be able to really do those things. Like we just put our daughter through ISR swim lessons, and it was well over $1,000 this summer. We want to be able to sponsor a family for that because it's very expensive.
Yeah.
And not everyone has access to that. But yeah, we keep putting things in our brain like that would be really fulfilling to be able to gift people with whatever those things are.
Yeah, to be generous for sure.
I loved how you mentioned the $1,000 for swim lessons. How anti-fire movement of you to say that. This whole notion that we're supposed to not spend.
Yeah.
And I dwell on this all the time with people. I always say it's not about spending less. It's about spending better. And your better is different than my better. When you say $1,000 on swim lessons, like inside, I'm thinking like, holy crap, that's a lot. But I have my version of that, as do your clients and my clients. I have a client that spends $2,000 a month dining out. And they say, I know we shouldn't be doing this, but, and then they'll say, we spend $2,000 a month dining out. But what may seem crazy to you or me, to them, it's about creating memories. It's about bringing other people along for the shared experience, creating memories, building relationships, sharing that bottle of wine. And that may not be what you or I would do, but for them, that's their better. That's spending their values. And so when you even mentioned the swimming lessons, I'm like, this is awesome, because it shouldn't be about going, cutting everything out of our life and hoarding as much money as we can. It's about what's valuable for our family and our journey. And it's one of the things I admire most about you guys, because you guys aren't surface level in your podcast, in your social media, in your life. You guys are just real, and that seeps into everything that you do. And I think that's why you've gathered the audience that you have, because you are real and you live according to your values.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Thank you.
Coming from somebody like you. Yeah, thanks. Okay, Travis, you had an episode come out recently, and it was one of my favorites, and I think it's because it's something that resonated with me so well. It was the pile of cash test episode. And it's just one that visually for me, I'm like, this, like, you can't not hear this and go, oh, wow, this is, I can apply this in almost every situation. So I don't know if we've ever talked about this in our podcast. I mentioned it at one point when I was talking about like flipping things on Facebook Marketplace. For our listeners, can you just kind of give them like a brief synopsis of the pile of cash test so they can maybe make some wiser choices after hearing you come on here?
Absolutely. Yeah, this was a really dumb idea of mine that I didn't think had any legs. But so several years ago, I was meeting with somebody and they said they were going to go buy a brand new car and 35,000, I can't remember the amount. And they said they were going to go get a loan for it. And I said, if you really want to buy this car, fine. You do you. Like, seriously, if that's important to you, like, do it. do it, but please don't use debt. And they said, Travis, it's better to use debt. And I said, you wouldn't be buying it if it weren't for the debt. And they said, yeah, we would. The debt has nothing to do with us. We're just making a good financial decision by using the debt because we don't have to take our money out and we get low rates and blah, blah, blah. And I said, do me a favor. I said, go to the bank, take out that much money, 30, 35,000, go to the bank, take it out, set it on your kitchen table and stare at it and look at it and think about that. And the next day, if you really would take that money, if you could honestly take that pile of cash and go buy that vehicle, then go buy the vehicle. I'd say, I'd encourage you to not use debt, but if you really think you would buy that vehicle still, then fine, you should go ahead and buy that vehicle. I said, I have a feeling you won't buy this vehicle. And they said, well, of course we're going to buy the vehicle. And they walked out, and I didn't know they were actually going to do this because it was a really dumb idea that I had. And they did. They went and got the money. They set it on their table and they came back to me and they said, Travis, you were right. They said, we wouldn't buy this vehicle without the debt. We couldn't emotionally separate ourselves from that huge pile of money for a vehicle. And so they put some of the money back and they went and they bought a cheaper vehicle with cash. And they said, it was really messing with us. And I always make this argument that debt is a psychological and emotional weapon, and it twists us up and we don't even see it coming, but it happens. And so I was trying to make this point there. Anytime we're thinking about buying something, especially if we think about using debt to buy it, really consider if we had a big stack of cash here, or actually go get the cash, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Would you exchange it for this thing, whether that's an iPhone or a car or fill in the blank for your life? But I really think that it can help us dissect that psychological and emotional warfare that we're feeling.
And there's an exchange that happens when you pay with cash. We're so used to swiping.
Yeah.
And I don't have to give the cashier anything. I swipe my card and I get to keep my card. And I also get the items. But and whether that means debit card or credit card, however you're doing it, it's still like a card.
Mm-hmm.
There's no transaction there. But with money, you actually, physical cash, I give you my money to get whatever I'm buying.
Yeah.
You feel it more.
Yeah, emotionally, it's hard to part with it.
Yeah, I don't use cash very often, but when I do, I used cash at a football game a few weeks ago, and I was like, damn, $10 for a tri-tip sandwich? What? And if I were to just spend that on my card, I wouldn't have thought that much about it.
No question.
But that was half of my 20. Therefore, I thought a lot about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think we feel that anymore because I don't know about you guys, but we don't even use cash anymore. I mean, we rarely have cash, and so I think we're getting more disconnected from our money as time passes. So whether we use cash or not use cash, I think there's just something that can be said about finding ways to connect ourselves with our spending behaviors so that we can gain a little bit better access to the emotional and psychological pieces. Because I think as a whole, the more digital we're getting, the harder it becomes and the more we're losing that warfare.
Yeah, agree with that completely. Travis, this is our famous last question, which I'm sure you've heard, and I'm excited because we're asking a financial coach this question. If you could put a stop sign on anybody's financial journey or a financial decision that they're about to make, where would you put that stop sign, or what would you stop them from doing?
Shockingly, I didn't prepare for this one, but I'm trying not to be repetitive to some of my prior answers. Two things. I think the one is going to be, don't feel the pressure to buy a house before it's the right decision for you. That pressure is so immense. And I know I'm beating a dead horse here. Like I keep talking about it, but it's just in young adults, that's where we're at. And so being more patient about buying a house is probably number one.
Yeah.
And then number two is this idea that we need to find fulfillment in our careers. We need to pursue work that matters. And society says it shouldn't matter. Society says it doesn't matter. Society says you make the most money you can and get out of that job as fast as you can so that you can enjoy the life of leisure, so you can enjoy not working anymore. And I think we have it backwards. And so my stop sign would be, don't gut out a career that provides you no fulfillment. If you're working half of your waking hours, don't do something that drains you. And I always use the test that I ask. And I always say, when you wake up in the morning, are you either A, excited for what you're about to do, B, merely tolerating what you're about to do, or C, dreading what you're about to do? And studies show that 70% of Americans either dislike or hate their jobs. And so for most people, the answer is either tolerate or hate.
Wow.
And I think we deserve better. I think everybody deserves better.
Yeah.
That's such a good stop sign. And I have to speak from, I haven't totally left teaching, but right now I'm not teaching. I just started my financial coaching business, and I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and just get so excited to get on a call. And I am not a morning person at all.
No.
Zero. I'll wake up at 6 a.m. and get my coffee and hop on a call with someone from the East Coast, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
To have that really is such a change, because I didn't have that exact feeling from teaching. I think I tolerated it. So it's definitely interesting to see that. I love that stop sign. That's my favorite.
Yeah, that's a really good stop sign. I like that. Well, Travis, thank you so much for coming on, man. We are so appreciative of your time. We're so appreciative of everything you're doing for, your community and the work that you're pouring into others, including ourselves, by listening to your podcast. Before we let you go, do you want to go ahead and shout out where our listeners can find you?
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is a blast. It was good to talk to you about some of these fun topics. And so I'm just grateful. I just want you to know that. And I'm excited to continue to share you with the people that I have the privilege of having some level of influence with. But yeah, people can find me on the Meaning Over Money podcast, obviously. They can find us on social media. They can find me, Travis Shelton, on Instagram, Meaning Over Money. And then they can find my website at TravisShelton.com.
I will put all of those in the show notes for everyone, so they can just go click it and find you.
We make it easy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you, Travis.
Thank
we
you so
appreciate you,
much.
man. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
All right, Toasties, we really hope that you enjoyed this interview as much as we did, because we freaking loved it. And now I really hope all of you go follow Travis on Instagram, because he's awesome and it's worth the follow.
1,000%. That's going to do it for this episode of The Price of Avocado Toast. As always, we are so thankful to have had this conversation with you and Travis Shelton, and we are so thankful to be part of this community alongside you. Happy budgeting.
You've got this, Toasties.
Thanks for listening to The Price of Avocado Toast. If you vibed with this episode, share it with a friend that you're comfortable having money talks with. And if you don't mind, we'd love if you could rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you're in need of my support as a financial coach, message me on Instagram. I'd love to help in any way that I can. Until next time.